Is reconvening. We are now at Louisiana Century. The time is 11:14 a.m. on Monday, September 18th, 2024. With the staff there at the penitentiary, please introduce yourself for the record.
Deputy Warden Tracy Falgood.
Stenographic classification. Carmen Shipley, offender records.
Okay, and we have our first case. Mr. George, would you introduce yourself? Tell us your name and DOC number.
Leroy George, 038-512.
And counsel, would you introduce yourself?
Good morning, Ms. Renata. Jane Hogan on behalf of Leroy George. I will make a statement at the end of the hearing with the committee's approval.
Okay, thank you. And for your both of your information, board member Bonnie Jackson has recused herself from participating. She served as the judge in Mr. George's case. So there'll be 4 members today, and it will require unanimous. Before we get started, we have quite a few folks who have joined us. I'd like to just recognize them. Here with us in opposition, we have Linda Burkett, Tamika Richardson, Tanya Harron, Chiquita Brock by Zoom, Trey Brock, Keisha Renee, Doran Humphrey, Latarsha Reed, Tanya Young, Condra Bro. Also here is Robin Smith, Angela Thompson, Lauren Lane, Ronya Lane, Kenesha Brock, and then by Zoom, Elisa Giles. In support, we have Leonard Holden, Tyrone Thomas, Tanisha Hawkins, Leroy George Sr., Troy Glover, Travis Bird, Angela Hawkins, James Jarvis, Greg Hawkins, Christy Hawkins, Marquita Hawkins, Katisha Jarvis, Alvin Johnson, and Gloria Bird. We also have a representative from the DA's office in East Baton Rouge Parish who will be speaking in opposition at the appropriate time. First, Mr. George, let me read some identifying information into the record, then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Marabella. Your case has been assigned to him.
Yes, sir.
He'll take the lead on the interview. So, Mr. George, as stated, your DOC number is 438512. You're here before the pardon board this morning, seeking the commutation of your sentence. You were sentenced in the 19th Judicial District, East Baton Rouge Parish, on April 12, 2002, for 5 counts of first-degree murder. You were sentenced to life on each count, running concurrently, without benefit, probation, parole, or suspension of sentence. So that's 5 life sentences all running together. Is that information correct, Mr. George?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, would you answer Mr. Marabella, please?
Good morning, Mr. George. How are you? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. I'm doing all right. Just a little nervous. How about yourself?
I'm doing well, thank you. Mr. George, how old are you, sir?
I'm 45 years old.
How long have you been in prison on these charges?
I've been incarcerated 24 years.
So you were 21 at the time these crimes occurred?
Yes, sir.
Tell me a little bit about who you were at 21 years old. How far had you gone in school?
I graduated out of high school. I completed 12th grade. At 21 years of age, I was a young man that, was offered to a lot of partying and, a lot of irresponsibility. I had a lot of mixed emotions going on in my life.
Okay.
At the time.
Let's talk a little bit about that, okay? Were you working?
Yes, sir.
What kind of job did you have?
I worked at Associated Groceries.
Okay, and what did you do at Associated Groceries?
I drove the forklift, and I went through the warehouse, pulling groceries, things of that nature there.
How long had you been there?
I had started that job. I had been there probably like a year and a half then.
Drugs or alcohol an issue with you back then? Did you drink at all?
No, so I didn't do drugs, but I drank a little bit. I drank every now and then. I wasn't a constant drinker, but I drank like every blue moon.
Okay. Never did drugs at all?
No, sir.
let's talk about what happened on July the 10th of 1999. Tell me where you were. You ended up going to a party on Wilmot Street. Is that right? So tell me what was going on with you. Who were you with, and what did you do at this party? Tell me what happened.
On July 10th, 1999, I went to a party at Miss Spooner residence. Upon making it to the party, me and my lifelong friends, exited the car and went to the yard to speak with Mrs. Spooner for a brief second. Upon exiting the yard, going back to the car, a fight broke out in the middle of the street. I made a comment to the effect that makes no sense. A guy was getting jumped on in the middle of the street by between 10 and 13 people. My comment wasn't taken lightly, so I was struck behind the comment I had made. So I began to get crowded by a bunch of guys out there that night, and I was trying to break and make it to the car. As I broke and made it to the car, the guys, they was pulling on the door, trying to pull me back out the car. So as I got the car in gear, I sped off. Shots rung out, bullets hit the car. I was scared. I was scared for my life. Even the people that was in the car with me at the time, I was fearful. So I sped off. I made 2 left turns to make it back to North Foster to get out the area. When I made it back to North Foster, I didn't know that I was gonna be encountered by the same group of guys I had just had the fight with on Wilmot Street. So as I was speeding off, trying to get out the area, a guy was in the middle of the street. People in the car, they was hooping and hollering. I panicked. I hit the guy in the middle of the street. He was in the windshield of the car. I didn't know anybody else had got hit by that vehicle at the time. I'm truly remorseful for the crime that I have committed. I didn't mean to harm anybody. I was the sole driver of that car that night. I take full responsibilities for my actions. I'm not trying to make an excuse or play the blame game or pass the blame anywhere. It was me that was driving that car that night. I made some poor decisions. I made poor choices that night. I realized I could have done some things different, than what have happened. I could have went straight to the bowling alley, never have went to that party. I could have.
Mr. George, let me stop you for a second, okay? Now, you went to trial, right?
Yes, sir.
And at trial, jury found you guilty. They found that you were going 60 miles an hour, intentionally ran into a group of people, killed 5 of them, and seriously injured at least 5 or 6 more.
Yes, sir.
Now, you're telling me that you were really trying to protect yourself, trying to get away from these people that you thought were injuring you or were going to harm you?
Yes, sir.
That same jury, well, let me finish. That same jury came back with the death penalty.
Yes, sir.
It was later thrown out. The judge realized that somebody had seen something on television and you were given a new penalty phase. And then you cut a deal for 5 years, concurrently life sentences, right?
Yes, sir.
Now you're telling me today that while you're telling me you're accepting responsibility, you're telling me that, hey, look, they jumped on me, they were chasing me, I was scared, I drove away, I didn't intend on hurting anybody. Is that what I'm hearing? Because if you're not going to be honest with me, we can just move on. Is that your position?
So my position is I take full responsibility.
Well, you say that, but you're not telling me full responsibility about what you did. You're making it sound like these people were chasing after you. You didn't have any choice but to run over them because they were in the middle of the road.
I was scared. I panicked. The guy in the street looked like he had a gun or an object in his hand. And I had panicked that night because they had a bunch of hooping and hollering in that vehicle. And I was scared. And I don't know how to try to get to safe haven. When the car hit this guy, he was in the windshield. I couldn't see anything else at the time. And I was just trying to get out that area and try to keep everybody in that car as safe as possible.
Okay. Mr. George, that's your story. I'll accept that. That's what you're gonna tell me. I'm looking at facts that belie what you're telling me, but we'll move forward. Let's talk a little bit about what you've done while you've been in prison. Tell me some of the things, some of the programs that you've taken. Looks like you've done pretty well in prison the last 24 years. You've taken a lot of good programs. You've taken victim awareness. Tell me about victim awareness and tell me what you've learned in that program.
When I took victim awareness, at the time I was going through, some things in my heart that was truly dealing with me. And when I had a lot of mixed emotions and feelings that was going on. And when I took victim awareness showed me what was dealing with me. It was guilt. It was guilt because I had took the life of 5 young men who didn't deserve to have their life taken in my hands. It was guilt from the pain, the hurt, the harm, and the suffering, the grief I had caused their families. That I had took someone special from them, and that shouldn't have happened. And it had taught me that my own family, I have caused pain and grief in their life. It taught me about.
But do you think by continuing to deny what actually happened, that is relieving their pain in any way?
No, sir. I'm not denying anything that happened that night. What I'm telling you is what happened that night.
So you're telling me it was an accident and a jury came back and found you intentionally killed 5 different people. And your
Right.
story today is that it was an accident, basically.
Right. It was an accident because everything happened in my hand. I was the sole driver of that car. With nobody else driving that car. I drove that car. I end up hitting some people, and I take full responsibility for that.
Now, you've taken a lot of good vocational programs. Tell me a little bit about the vocational programs that you've taken. Welding, you've taken welding. Tell me about those things that you've taken while you've been in prison.
I have been a Class A trustee for 13 years here in Angola. I'm currently in the reentry vocational wellness school. I have obtained my level 1 certification and currently working on my level 2 certification. I have skills in carpentry. I have skills in culinary. I have taken numerous of programs here in Angola that Angola had to offer. I've taken victim awareness. I've taken thinking for a change. I've taken 100 hour
What
substance
did you
abuse.
learn? What did you learn in thinking for a change? What did that program help you with?
Thinking for a change taught me not to just act. It taught me to stop and think. Think before I act, to make rational decisions. I think before I act now. I make sound decisions. It taught me to remain in control of my actions. I don't have to just, think. That's something that thinking for a change that taught me.
Taking a lot of faith-based programs as well. Tell me about your work in the faith-based programs.
My faith-based program has really, taught me to be, humble me. It taught me to, be obedient. You can see over the years, I have, stayed away from the write-ups here in Angola. It taught me to, be a better man, to go out and, help the guys in the community. Those things that faith-based taught me. It taught me to the well-being of God, put God first in everything that I do.
You've got a low tiger. You've had 2 write-ups since you've been in prison. Your last one was in 2003, I believe. Is that right? So you've been a good prisoner. You've been, you've adjusted well while you've been in prison. You've learned a lot of things. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
You have unanimous opposition from law enforcement. You have pretty much unanimous opposition from the victims' families in this case. What would you say to them today? What would you say to the family of the victims who've lost the lives of 5 young men and 5 or 6 more people seriously injured. What would you say?
To the families of Mr. Smith, Mr. Kidd, Mr. Turner, Mr. Brock, and Ms. Stalling, I am deeply remorseful for the crime that I have committed against your loved ones. I had no right to take anyone from you. I made some poor decisions. I am truly remorseful for the hurt, the harm, the pain I have caused in your families. And every day, I wish that this crime would never have happened. And I am truly, remorseful to all and will forever be indebted.
Thank you, Mr. George. Warden, what can you tell us about Mr. George?
Good morning. Mr. George came to us in June of '02. And in November of '02, got his medium custody. Not too long after he attained his 10 years with us, which was at the time and still is a means as far as him getting into a minimum custody setting. He went to a minimum C, in 14 a min B. And like he said, since 2017, he has been a min A. He's got 2 write-ups. I mean, since he's been here, we've not had issues with him disciplinary or he's moved himself up.
Thank you, Warden. Madam Chairman, that's all.
All right, thank you. I don't see any other questions, so we'll hear from first those who are here in support. Could we hear from Mr. Leroy George Senior?
Can you hear me?
Sir, we can.
Yes. Leroy George is a valuable member to the family. He regrets all what he has done. And I see a positive life in him if he should be released from prison. The churches here that I have been going to, they support him, as well as some of my neighbors here, they support him also. And my 3 stepsons support him. We're all trying to look for jobs for him and stuff of that nature, but Florida, they would not accept the employment sheet that was given to me. They say he would have to be out in order to get a job here in Florida. So we all looking forward to him being released, and I pray that y'all will look favorable and give him and grant him clemency, pardon.
Thank you, Mr. George. We appreciate you speaking with us this morning.
You're welcome.
Also, on Zoom is Mr. Travis Bird. He didn't log in. Okay, so we're missing him. Katisha Jarvis.
Just stay there.
Good morning. How are you guys doing today?
Morning. Thanks for asking.
I wanted to start off first by saying that we too, as the family, is very remorseful that we all are in this predicament. And I say we all because, we love our loved ones and we all support the people that's in our family. So I want to start off by saying that from us as Leroy's family, we are remorseful as well. We feel pain, on both sides as well. So to the families, we are with you guys as well. Tino is I call him Tino. Leroy Jordan, he's my first cousin. And he's just a very stand-up guy. Before all of this occurred, he was on his way to UCLA. He was on his way to college. He was working every single day. He was, helping us out, helping his mom. He was pretty much the protector of his mom's house by him being the only son, and when we talk on the phone and, we speak and I've asked him the things and just to hear the things that he has accumulated while he was here. And it was, just outstanding to me to only have 2 write-ups within those 24 years. And I was like, man, that's awesome to be in a place that can cause you to literally lose your mind, and or you can intervene in other things that take place behind, prison walls, and to just maintain that integrity. To me, it just speaks volumes of the integrity and the character that he truly have. And I just pray that, it's a great outcome. I also pray for the families that have lost their loved ones as well, because we too have lost on this side as well. And I'm just going to leave with this. If all of us that's viewing from this side, that side, all of us that's in the room, if we can look in our own self life, us too, everyone that's on the earth that can make sound decisions, whether good or bad, we all have been in a place where we should have been, or decisions that we could have gone another way with our mind. The difference is we're just not sitting in his seat. And I'm a very spiritual person. And my thing is, when we do things, we want forgiveness, we want compassion, we want mercy, from when we do things. And so for us to extend forgiveness, for us to extend grace, and I'm not saying that it's an easy thing to forgive. I'm not saying it is an easy thing to show compassion or to show mercy. But again, I'm a person of faith. I'm a person that follows the word of God. Some of us may follow, some of us may not, but he told us to forgive, that we may be forgiven. If we're all trying to make it into an eternal place, which is everlasting life, to see Jesus Christ, our Savior, then how will he forgive us if we don't forgive others? And again, I'm remorseful. The family, we hurting for you guys as well as we're hurting on this side too. And he's just a phenomenal guy. Before all of this, happened, no one wake up in the morning and expect their life to change in a drastic way. Life throws us balls that we not looking for. We just pick up the pieces and move on with our life. And like his dad spoke, we just hope that the families can find it in their heart to forgive, and as he forgives himself for what has taken place. And I'm deeply sorry for the situation that everyone is in.
Thank you, Ms. Jarvis. We appreciate your remarks. Okay, we do, I've been told Ms. Travis Bird has logged in, so we'd like to hear from him at this time. Looks like we lost him. We'll come back if he comes back in. We'd like to hear from the opposition now. In the interest of time, Kanisha Brock, could we hear from you? Kanisha Brock. All right, sorry.
My Sylvester Brown, I do forgive the God for killing my son, but it's still a hurt feeling. And I don't think he should be paroled because him getting a life sentence. Not the death penalty, but a life sentence. That's all I can say.
Yes, sir, thank you. Sorry, I got your name wrong. Robin Smith. Morning.
I'm thankful for this opportunity. I wrote down my thoughts like a standing trade. I'm here today to speak on behalf of my one and only son, Aaron Smith. He did not deserve to die the way that he did, but his head is big and successful. Mr. Leroy Josh took something from me that was so very precious. He chose to hit my son with a Delta 88 on the day after his 15th birthday. I chose to forgive him in 1999 because I know that if I don't forgive, I won't be forgiven. I will be walking around in my own prison because unforgiveness is like me taking poison and expecting another person to die. Um, excuse me. I have no hatred in my heart for Mr. George. And when we were asked before the trial, my husband and I made it known that we personally did not support the death penalty. However, I did want the justice system to do what it was designed to do. When your child leaves home totally healthy and does not return, it changes your life forever. And I had to learn how to live all over again. My husband said that taking Aaron off life support was the hardest thing that he ever had to do. And likewise for me. The next hardest thing was picking a plot to bury him in. If you have never had to do this, there is no way that you could understand. And trust me, I don't want you to. I personally didn't feel like Mr. George was remorseful for what he had done. And I felt like he might do it again. His mouth said it, but mouth can say anything. I do not know if Mr. George has changed or been rehabilitated. A few courses of good and good behavior cannot change a person's heart. My prayer is that he has repented and had a change of heart. And that way, he can be free even behind prison walls. That's between him and God. There are some things that I have no control over. One was stopping what happened to my child, and another is deciding if Mr. George will ever be released from prison. What he did on July 10, 1999 was horrific, and the lives of my family and so many other people were upended. The good that came out of it for me was a grief support group that I established in 2001. I still stand on what I said back then, that the justice system prevailed. He was spared from the death penalty, and his current sentence fits the crimes that he committed. If the board decides to recommend commutation for Mr. George's sentence to life with possibility of parole, then I will have to deal with it. But on behalf of my son, Aaron, Jamal Rice, I cannot, with a good conscience, give Mr. George a free get out of jail. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, we're gonna go hear from the DA's office, Ms. Barbera.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Renata. Again, Tracy Barbera for the state of Louisiana. As Mr. Marabella so adequately pointed out, 12 members of a jury found that Mr. George had the specific criminal intent requisite for the crime of first-degree murder. And it is our position that even without his lack of candor about his intent that night, the underlying facts and circumstances of this case, the trail of torture that was left behind for these family members speaks for itself, in that 23, 24 years is just not enough time in prison for what he did. And we do respectfully ask that his request for commutation of sentence be denied. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it. All right, Mr. George, before we turn it over to Ms. Hogan, is there anything you'd like to tell us?
Yeah. I am truly remarkable to all the family members that have lost their loved ones to the crime I have committed. I take full responsibility for the crime that I have committed and everything that happened that night. No one should have to lose their child at the hands of another. I am truly remorseful. I apologize. I am truly apologetic to all who have been hurt or harmed by my sinner's act, to be a responsible individual. I would like to, apologize to my family for the hurt I have caused them. Also to law enforcement, I had no right to be a burden on them for the work that they do in the community. I would like to thank DOC for the programs that they have afforded me with to continue to be a better individual. And I would like to thank the members of the board for this opportunity. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Ms. Hogan?
Thank you, Mr. Natsa. Just very briefly, I understand this is not an easy case for the board. It's not an easy case for the families to have to relive. We're certainly not attempting to cause any more pain. I did attach to my brief an excerpt of a commissioner's report that outlines some pertinent facts, and while it's not relevant to the ultimate question of whether Mr. George should be granted clemency, I do think that some of the underlying factors are important, namely that Mr. George had gone to a party with not just his 2 lifelong friends, but also his sister who suffers from sickle cell anemia and his cousin, who's his female cousin. It's undisputed that Mr. George didn't start a fight. It's undisputed that Mr. George was attacked by a group of people. It's undisputed that as he was fleeing the scene, shots were fired and there were bullet holes found in his car. There was never any allegation or proof that there was anybody in Mr. George's car who had a gun, because nobody had a gun. And Mr. George was unfamiliar with this area. He made 2 left turns. Had he gone right instead of left, we wouldn't be here. Had he not fled the scene, he or somebody in his car might have gotten struck by a bullet. And so it's not as though Mr. George woke up one day and just decided to do something malicious. This was a tragic circumstance. I can't imagine how I would have reacted in such a situation. And Mr. George is not saying any of this. He's not attempting to not own up to his responsibility. He was the sole driver that night. He knows that this all happened because he was driving a car, because he went to this party, because he was driving. He was just trying to get away, but it was ultimately on him. And so he does take responsibility for that. Mr. Marabella, you mentioned that Mr. George has adjusted well to prison. That's because Leroy George has always been a very good person. This is a horrible crime that occurred on July the 10th, but before this and after this, Leroy George is really a man of character. His institutional record is phenomenal. This is his only criminal arrest ever in his life. He was a high school graduate. He played football at Baker High. He wasn't somebody who was causing problems, and he certainly hasn't caused any problems in the last 24 years. He's used his incarceration to better other people. He's gone on details outside the prison gates to set up tents at the governor's mansion. He speaks to juveniles, both that are coming on tours, a Scared Straight tour. He speaks to juveniles that are younger guys first when they come to prison, encouraging them to get their GEDs, get into programs. Mr. George has been at Camp F now for several years. He's been a trustee without ever losing his status since 2013. He's sought every opportunity to better himself, and we're not asking for Mr. George to be immediately granted release tomorrow. I understand that this is a very, very difficult case, and it's beyond what is typical before this board. And so we're just asking that this board recognize that there were mitigating circumstances which led to Mr. George's incarceration, and that since he's been incarcerated, he's really just been a phenomenal person, and that he is worthy of some eventual release and some eventual expectation of or hope of release. So we would ask this board to consider commuting his sentence, not to immediate parole eligibility, but to some future parole eligibility with any conditions that are deemed appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the board prepared to vote?
Yeah.
Mr. Marabella?
Thank you. Mr. George, well, first off, I'd like to thank the people who have been here today to speak. I appreciate your courage on both sides. I appreciate the family of the victims being here. I know how difficult that is. And I appreciate the supporters on behalf of Mr. George. Mr. George, you've done a lot of things while you've been in prison. You've got a good record. You've done quite well while you've been in prison. The warden speaks well of you. Programs are good. I'm not so sure you were totally honest with me. I'm not so sure that you have really accepted what you did that night and how it happened. You may have just decided in your own mind that's the way you need to have it or remember it. I'm not sure. But the bottom line is you killed 5 people and you were convicted by a jury. First degree murder, 5 counts, first degree murder. Those families continue to suffer today. And you have been in prison for 24 years. 5 murders, that, in my opinion, is just not sufficient time. I think that you're working hard. I think you're doing things. You're a young man. You're 45 years old. There'll come a time when you do get some relief. But for me today, based upon law enforcement opposition, based upon the horrible crime in this case, the number of victims in this case, victims opposition in this case, my vote today would be to deny your relief.
Mr. Freeman?
I also want to thank the families on both sides for showing up today. We really do appreciate it. I know it's hard on you. And I concur with everything Mr. Marabella said in my vote.
Mr. Russian?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. George. The crime you committed in the eyes of the jury was premeditated, or they wouldn't come down with a first degree murder charge. 24 years is totally insufficient for the magnitude and the nature of the crime that you committed. I heard Ms. Hogan when she said that you deserve a chance and we can delay your release to future years. But under Louisiana law, if I commute to 40 years to 99 years with parole eligibility after 40 years, you automatically become eligible under Act 122. That is the main reason that I'm not voting to grant you, because I can commute your sentence a number of years with parole eligibility after any number. You're 45 years old, you've served 20 years, you'll become immediately eligible. Based on that wrongful proposition, victim opposition, I deny your request.
Mr. Russian? Mr. George, I want to thank you for the community service work you do within the prison, your own community. Warden Fowler, you said you've done some community service work outside the prison, and I want to commend you for that. I think you should feel pretty good today in that you heard that Mr. Brock, both Mr. Brock and Ms. Smith have forgiven you, although they maintain their opposition, but that ought to give you some relief. I do agree with my colleagues that 24 years is insufficient for the harm you've caused. So my vote today is to deny your application. So, sir, today your application for clemency has been denied. Keep doing the good work. Good luck to you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.